Two women leave the same grocery store, one driving a 10-year-old hatchback, the other climbing into a brand new leased SUV. The hatchback driver has a net worth over $2 million, and the SUV driver is barely covering her monthly payments. This isn't a rare exception. It's actually the normal pattern once you start paying attention to how real wealth behaves. Real wealth in America has learned to stay quiet, and today you're going to learn exactly how to spot it. Here are 10 signs someone is genuinely wealthy, even when everything visible about them suggests the complete opposite. Millions of ordinary Americans are sitting on 7 figures right now while looking like they're barely scraping by. According to recent wealth research, there are tens of millions of millionaires living quietly across the United States today. That means in any random group of 30 people, a couple of them likely have a 7-figure net worth. Could you actually pick them out of a crowded room? Just by looking at what they're wearing or driving? Almost nobody can. And that exact blind spot is precisely why this topic matters so much right now. The loudest spenders are often drowning financially behind the scenes, while the truly wealthy stay completely silent about money. Researchers call this pattern the Millionaire Next Door, and decades of consistent data keep confirming it's true. The typical American millionaire isn't a celebrity, it's a retired teacher, a small business owner, or a nurse. They built wealth slowly on ordinary salaries by repeating a handful of unglamorous habits with relentless, boring consistency. Before the list begins, remember one core idea that quietly explains every single sign you're about to hear. Income is not wealth. Income is just money flowing in loudly, while wealth is the quiet portion that stays. Wealth is simply the gap between what you earn and what you spend, multiplied steadily over years of time. A doctor earning a huge salary who spends every dollar of it actually has very little real wealth. A teacher earning far less who consistently saves and invests can quietly become wealthier than that same doctor. Social media only shows the income side, the cars and the vacations, never the boring brokerage account underneath. The genuinely wealthy ignore the performance entirely and play a much quieter, far less visible financial game instead. Sign number 1. They drive a car that reveals absolutely nothing useful about their actual net worth. The fastest way to misjudge someone's wealth is glancing at their car, since the relationship runs backward from expectation. New car prices have climbed to record highs, with average monthly payments now stretching well past $700. People financing expensive new vehicles are rarely the truly wealthy. They're simply renting the appearance of success monthly. Classic research on American millionaires found they typically spend only about 1% of net worth on a car. For someone worth $2 million, that means driving something modest, often bought lightly used and kept for years. The most common cars among the wealthy aren't luxury brands. They're reliable, unglamorous vehicles that simply keep running. Consider Priya, a retired nurse who still drives her 15-year-old sedan with a small dent in the bumper. Her co-workers assumed she was struggling financially, while her brokerage account quietly crossed well into 7 figures. When asked why she never upgraded, Priya simply says a car's only job is driving her places reliably. That faded paint isn't evidence of struggle. It's the visible receipt of decades of quiet, deliberate financial discipline. Sign number 2. They live in a house noticeably smaller than what their income could technically afford. Wealthy-looking neighborhoods often hide deeply stretched household budgets behind impressive front doors and perfectly manicured, expensive-looking lawns. The genuinely wealthy frequently do the opposite, buying modest homes and investing the difference for decades afterward. One famous investor still lives in the same modest house he purchased decades ago, despite his massive fortune. That same instinct shows up at every wealth level, not only among billionaires, but among ordinary high savers too. Every extra bedroom means more property tax, more insurance, more furniture, and far less money left over for investing. A bigger house often becomes an anchor that quietly prevents people from building any real wealth at all. The wealthy understand a home is partly shelter and partly a financial decision, and they refuse to confuse the two. Sign number 3. Their clothing and accessories give away absolutely nothing. about their actual financial situation. Genuinely wealthy people are notoriously hard to read because they've stopped using their appearance as a status billboard. Logos disappear, watches become simple and practical, and clothing gets replaced only once it actually wears out completely. Flashy, attention-grabbing spending is often a signal of someone still trying to prove something to others. People who feel financially secure rarely need strangers to validate that security through visible brand names or labels. There's a term for this growing trend now, often called stealth wealth among people who study these spending patterns. Loud logos increasingly read as slightly desperate, while plain, well-made basics have become the real signal of money. The people who can afford anything have largely stopped wanting to be seen buying anything at all. Sign number 4. They go noticeably quiet whenever conversations at gatherings shift toward money or spending. Listen closely at any party, and you'll notice who constantly narrates exactly what things cost them personally. The genuinely wealthy almost never do this, since money has simply stopped feeling exciting or worth mentioning. For them, money became background plumbing long ago, the quiet system that simply lets normal life function smoothly. Consider Renata, who ran a small repair shop for 30 years before quietly selling the business for millions. Ask Renata what she does now, and she just shrug and say she's retired. Nothing more, nothing less. She still drives an older car, splits restaurant bills evenly, and never once reveals her actual financial position. People performing financial success loudly are often still climbing, while those who arrive tend to go quiet instead. Sign number 5. Their actual money stays completely invisible because it's constantly working hard somewhere unseen. This single sign separates someone who merely looks rich from someone who has genuinely built lasting wealth. The wealthy keep money flowing steadily into retirement accounts, investment accounts, and savings vehicles most people barely touch. Current contribution limits allow tens of thousands of dollars yearly across retirement and health savings accounts combined. Once those accounts are maxed out, the wealthy simply keep investing into ordinary taxable brokerage accounts afterward. The real secret is automation. Since money gets invested before it ever reaches their checking account at all, they never see that money, so they never miss it and never feel tempted to spend it instead. Maxing a retirement account consistently for 30 years at normal returns can produce well over $2 million. Consider Hannah, a hospital worker on an ordinary salary who quietly maxed every available account for 15 years. Her co-workers assume she's simply frugal, never realizing her actual net worth would genuinely shock most of them. Sign number 6. They owe almost nothing meaningful to credit cards, lenders, or any high-interest debt. Americans currently carry over $1 trillion in credit card debt, often at interest rates near 20%. Carrying a balance at that rate can effectively double the original cost of whatever was purchased within a few years. The genuinely wealthy use credit cards heavily for rewards, then pay the entire balance off every single month. They eliminate any debt charging more interest than their investments reliably earn, almost as soon as possible. Low-interest debt like an old fixed mortgage often gets left alone deliberately, since investing elsewhere earns more. Owing nothing to anyone is its own quiet, deeply underrated form of genuine financial freedom and stability. Sign number 7. They stay remarkably calm whenever an unexpected, genuinely expensive financial emergency suddenly appears. Watch how someone reacts when a car breaks down or a job disappears, because pressure reveals true financial reality. For most households, a sudden major expense becomes an instant crisis, since average savings cushions remain dangerously thin. The genuinely wealthy meet identical bad news with surprising calm, built entirely from a real emergency fund. That emergency cash typically sits in a high-yield savings account, not a traditional bank account earning almost nothing. The difference between earning meaningful interest and earning almost nothing compounds into a massive gap over many years. To people holding identical savings balances can end up worlds apart, simply based on where that cash sits. Sign number 8. They buy genuinely well-made items once, then keep using them reliably for many years. Wealthy people often spend more upfront on quality, then use that same item for 10 or 15 years straight. Meanwhile, someone trying to appear wealthy often replaces cheap items repeatedly, ultimately spending far more money overall. Cheap items become expensive the moment you're forced to repurchase them again and again over several years. Consider Sophia, who bought one quality leather bag over a decade ago and still carries it every single day. She spent far less on bags over 10 years than friends, who replace trendy ones every single season. When something breaks, the wealthy usually repair it first. Since a small fix often beats an expensive replacement, this habit looks like simple frugality, but it's actually a sophisticated strategy prioritizing durability over constant novelty. Sign number 9, they've made complete comfortable peace with saying no to social and lifestyle pressures. The genuinely wealthy easily decline expensive trips, dinners, or upgrades that don't truly matter to their actual priorities. This often gets misread as financial struggle, when really it reflects years of intentional, disciplined spending choices. Lifestyle creep, where spending quietly rises alongside income, remains one of the most reliable wealth killers overall. The wealthy resist this almost instinctively, letting any income increase flow directly into investments instead of upgrades. Consider Talia, who received a major raise years ago and changed almost nothing about her daily lifestyle. Her apartment, her car, and her routine stayed identical, while the entire raise quietly funded her investment accounts. That's selective. Occasional spending only on things she truly values isn't deprivation. It's simply disciplined, intentional freedom. Sign number 10. They've completely stopped trying to look wealthy because they've genuinely already arrived there. At some point, genuinely wealthy people stop performing success entirely, since performance was always a substitute anyway. All that energy once spent appearing successful gets redirected toward flexibility, free time, and genuine personal independence. Real wealth ultimately buys the freedom to walk away from a bad job or an unhealthy situation entirely. This is the part surface-level signals can never fully capture, yet it's truly the entire underlying point. What wealth actually buys isn't a flashier car or a louder watch. It's quiet, lasting personal freedom instead. Once this concept clicks, genuinely wealthy people start appearing everywhere because you finally recognize what you're seeing. A faded car paid off years ago, plain clothing chosen purely for comfort, and a telling silence around money. These details aren't signs of someone losing financially. They're actually fingerprints of someone who quietly already won. So picture that parking lot again. The modest hatchback beside the flashy leased SUV from the very beginning. You can read the situation differently now, recognizing which driver the actual bank statement genuinely favors completely. Every single sign here points toward one uncomfortable truth. Looking wealthy and being wealthy are entirely different skills. Underneath every habit covered today sits one quiet advantage that absolutely nobody is naturally born possessing already. These people simply learned financial mechanics that school systems rarely bother teaching anyone during their education. How debt compounds against you, how investing compounds steadily for you, and how automatic systems beat raw willpower. That foundational understanding is exactly what makes every other sign on this list genuinely possible to achieve. If even one of these signs felt uncomfortably familiar, that discomfort is actually useful, valuable information worth examining. Quiet wealth was never really about luck or inheritance. It was always about understanding these simple, repeatable rules and the best possible moment to start. Learning and applying these exact rules is right now today.